Welcome to the Holste podcast. I'm so glad that you decided to click this link and join in the conversation, as today we are going to be talking about self-control. We don't really have much self-control. And for those of us that do have good self-control, well, this is the time for you to get involved and share to the world what advice you can give to have good self-control, because there are a lot of people out there that don't know how to express good self-control. And I being one of them. I, for the longest time in my life, had no real good, clear way of expressing self-control. I was out of hand. I did and said things just without even considering other people's feelings. I just went out, did what I wanted with no respect for other people. My self-control was out of control. There was no self-control. And I feel bad about it now because I realize just what damage I caused, not just for myself, but for people around me. When was the last time you really thought to yourself, how do I handle things? Do I have enough patience? Do I have the ability to be a good person by how I react and how I treat other people? Because chances are your answer to all these questions are going to be surprising to you, because when you really take the time to think and admit your faults, you realize that in this perfect world, quote unquote, that we live in today, we're not so perfect. We don't display our self-control in ways that we should. We see it every day, whether it be on the news, social media, our workplace. It doesn't matter where you go, there is people with lack of self-control. It's the way that people talk and treat people. And we see the damages of what that does on a daily basis. My parents always said, hold your tongue, watch what you say, think before you act. And although I never took those words of wisdom to heart, I see what they're saying now. You know, I learned as a young kid that our tongues are our most vicious, violent weapon that we have. More out of control than our swinging fist, more violent than any other thing in this world. Our tongues that we speak with every day is our lack of control. We choose to say things. We choose to use our words as a way to hurt people in ways that are so destructive that we don't always realize what we say and how it affects other people. You know, there's some people out there that think that they can say whatever they want and there won't be any backlash. That the people that they are dishing out these words to are going to be the ones that will suffer the most. And that is far from the truth. Because at the end of the day, you have to live with the words that you say. And some words, no matter how much you ask for forgiveness and how much you try to backtrack and try to take those words back, those words can never be erased. The memories of what you say will always stick like someone duct taped or super glued it right to you. They're ingrained into the memories of people for the rest of their lives. And yet we are hardly sorry for those moments that we say these things to people. And it's not just the words that we say directly to people, it's the words that we say about others behind their back. We have no self-control. We have lost the ability. We have lost all sense of reality these days because we have let social media go too far. What was designed and used so others can see the exciting things that you're doing with your life has turned into, I'm going to use this platform to hurt and to make others miserable by saying things that are too critical. We say things that are hurtful, destructive, because it's a lot easier to type it than to say it to someone's face sometimes. And maybe that's not the case. Maybe it is easier for you to go to someone and say something that is hurtful. So hurtful that you don't realize just what harm you are doing. We have seen an increase in people with anxiety, people that suffer from PTSD because of how people treat one another. Our minds were not built to handle so much drama. And these days we're seeing it more and more because of the lack of control, the lack of respect that people have for one another. Why do we let it go that far? Why do we let our emotions speak in ways that we let that happen? It's all because we have gotten used to the fact that this is available and we just act with no self-control. You know, I talk about owning up to what I've done in the past. I talk about how I said and done things without having any self-control. I've lost friendships because of how I've reacted to things. I rushed to think the worst without knowing the true facts. And the end result of that was not only losing people as friends, losing relationships because of my actions, my lack of self-control, but I also have caused more hurt and pain for my own life. All because I didn't see the point in being positive. I would rather have done what I wanted when I wanted, lashing out and doing things without thinking about the consequences that would come from it. And most of all, I hurt the people that meant the world to me, including my parent, my family. You know, I think back to one summer where I actually was respectful and kind. And at first I thought of this as kind of a slap to my face, but it really wasn't. It was a sense of appreciation for what good I did by having good self-control. You see, I wasn't the best kid growing up, and I just didn't act in a way that was appropriate. And one summer, I actually acted in a great way that my relatives expressed their appreciation for that. And I took it the wrong way. I viewed it as them being sarcastic. And maybe, to be quite honest, I was maybe just a little bit embarrassed and realized just how much I've screwed up in the past. And I didn't want to admit that. I didn't have enough self-control to pull myself back and see what they were trying to say. How often do you let that happen in your life? Where someone had the best intentions and you twisted it and turned it into something that it never should have been. You know, we talk about self-control. And one of the biggest struggles I've had with self-control is with spending money. I've talked about this in a prior podcast where I thought possessions were more important for happiness than just acknowledging the fact that there was people around in my life that loved and cared for me, and that was more special, more important than any item or possession. I thought I had to have certain things in order to create happiness. My self-control was non-existent because I was out of control, spending things to create unneeded happiness. I had no self-control. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do without any consideration of what was really more important to them. And what was more important to them was me spending quality time, me expressing my feelings in a proper way so they knew that they were cared for. The biggest thing about self-control is we don't see the big picture fast enough sometimes. We let ourselves think things that are not true. We force ourselves to think that we are not happy when really we had it all. We had everything we could ever ask for. But when we get out of control, when we start to see things that are not real, that self-control starts to go out the door. What about when we go through life situations and we become frustrated about what happens in our relationships? We don't communicate in the proper way. We don't have the self-control to hold back. When we have our problems in our relationships, we tend to lash out and say things that we don't mean at first. But after we act and say things and we let our attitudes get the best of us, we hurt the ones that we love. And because of the lack of self-control, we find ourselves being alone. We find ourselves losing the most important people. Why do we let ourselves get to that point? Why do we let ourselves get so out of control that we see amazing relationships and friendships end? It's because of greed. It's because we would rather have what we want than consider what other people want. You know, the biggest thing that I've seen that people really connected with, and I've had a few people talk to me about when I talked about the word joy on a past podcast. I was surprised to see how many people responded with, "I've used that in my life." And in case you're just joining this podcast for the first time and you don't know what the word joy stands for Jesus first, others second, and yourself last. That is good self-control. When we put ourselves last and put others first, that shows the kindness and the true person that you are. It lets your true colors shine more brighter than any colors out in the sky during a sunset. It is more pretty, more vibrant. When you display your kindness and respect to others and maintaining that self-control than letting the darkness show. And that darkness shows way more than we need it. There's too much darkness out there. There's not enough beautiful colors of people shining in this world because we would rather be out of control. Look at the way that our country is. There's too many people going back and forth between different issues that are going on in this world. And when someone doesn't agree with one side, they have to lash out. They have to criticize. They have to poke fun. They have to create more drama and negativity, displaying no lack of self-control. And what good does that do? It doesn't create anything good at all. In fact, it creates more of a problem than a solution. And that's the thing right there. When we display no lack of self-control, we aren't creating any solution at all except for more things to work out at the end. So why create these problems? Why create all this frustration when all we ever want really is some sense of peace? We don't let self-control happen because we have no filter. It kind of reminds me when you're hanging out with your family, perhaps even your parents, and you have kids, right? And your kids say things that you've said without them or even thinking that your kids are even listening, but they hear, trust me, they really hear. And they end up repeating what you've said, and it's really embarrassing, right? Because our kids don't know what self-control is. They just say things without even thinking about what the damages can be, especially when it involves your parents. And then the end result of that is your parents coming back to you going, "Why did your kids say that? Why are my grandchildren saying this?" And it's because kids don't know self-control. And another part of kids is, and I think this is a huge issue with a lot of parents today, is we're talking about self-control, right? And what is the biggest thing that kids lack with self-control? It's just like some adults like me, and that's spending. I know when I was a kid, I loved to go out and buy things, whether it been going to the gas station in Montana, which was the biggest one in that area is a company called Town Pump. And whenever I had money, I would want to go there and get a slushie or buy some beef jerky or some candy. And instead of just being rational and buying what was enough, we would go overboard, right? We would leave with more things than what we really needed. We didn't know the value of saving money. And for a lot of us, that goes into our adult life. We don't know how to save. We have no sense of control, self-control when we have money in our hands. And that's why I think a lot of people stopped carrying money and resulted into using debit cards or credit cards, because when you have cash in your hand, it's a lot more easier to want to spend when it's at your hands, compared to, for some, when it's on a debit card or a credit card. It's just easier for some to save that way, because some people leave their homes without that debit or credit card because they know that they're more liable to spend more because there's more of a credit limit or whatever. I know I don't always take my debit card. I just don't use it. I don't think about it as much as knowing that I have cash on me. And so we lack that self-control. We have to spend it. And that's the same way a kid's mind works. Oh, I have $1. What can I spend this on now? Oh, I got a gift card for Amazon. What can I use to spend it right now? I just got it, but I want to spend it right now. Kids don't value the fact that the more they save, the more when things later on pop up, they'll be able to get what they need, rather than, if you notice, when kids buy stuff like with no self-control, they end up buying stuff that is completely crazy, that they end up breaking or they don't even touch after the first week. And it just sits there and it creates dust and it's just pointless. We need to teach our kids at a young age the values of having self-control, not just with attitude as far as that aspect goes, but we need to teach them self-control when it comes to other things like spending money, or when they are out and about and they are doing things. And I keep coming up with more references to this because the biggest thing for me with self-control when I was growing up, when my mom would take me grocery shopping with her, what do we always do as kids? We want to touch everything. We want to get candy out of the candy aisle. We want to get a couple donuts from the donut shop area. We want to get the cool toys that are in the toy aisle. And we always say, I want. But the question really is, do we really need these things? See, that is self-control. When we stop ourselves and go, oh, that's really cool, but do I really need it right now? Is this something I am really going to use on a daily basis? And even as an adult, we don't really think of that either when we're out and about shopping. You see, for some of us guys, when we go into a car dealership, we look at all these cool things that they have, or when we go to an auto parts store and we see all the cool new things that are out for our vehicles or whatever, or even the toys that we may have that we go to the lake with, or when we go into the mountains or whatever. We have to have some sense of self-control, because if we don't, it's kind of like when you go into Costco and you go in there for one thing, but you end up leaving with 2 baskets full of things that you didn't really expect to walk out with. Now, granted, when you go shopping, yes, food is an essential. But when we're walking out with a new lawnmower or a weed trimmer or a new TV or a computer and we didn't really expect it, we just saw the great deal, what they call in the retail world as an impulse buy, we lose that sense of self-control. So what are some other things that we don't really display good self-control? And I think that's in our relationships that we have. We touched base a little bit about it at the beginning of the podcast, but I really want to go more in depth, because our relationships are something that is something more that we deal with on a daily basis, where we don't always show good self-control. Now, there's some relationships where there's great communication, where people respect and love each other enough to know when things should be said and when things should not be said. That it's better to just, like we talked about, kind of bite that tongue and not say anything at all. but there are a bigger amount of people out there that deal with the lack of self-control in their relationships, where every day is a battle, every day is a fight, where I think a lot of the issues that happen in relationships with self-control is the fact about money. Money is the biggest root of all evil, they say, right? Money can be a very tough topic to talk about, especially when it comes to financial issues. You know, we see it all the time today with financial situations. People struggle because of loss of jobs or lack of pay, and then things happen that pop up that we don't expect, like car issues, maybe issues with appliances breaking down that we really didn't expect to happen, and that all costs money. But it can also set you back if you don't have a good financial base. And the thing is, when you don't have that strong financial base, it can cause a lot of frustration. It can cause people in relationships to say things that out of frustration will hurt one another. And maybe it's the fact that you're not doing enough compared to another person's eyes. Maybe they think that you're not holding your side of the weight in the family, and they choose to criticize and break you down because of it. And that creates a lot of fights. That's where these words that should be held back come out, and it causes fights. And that's when self-control goes out the door. People stand up for themselves. And when people stand up for themselves, they do it the wrong way. Instead of creating good out of a situation and communicating in the right way, they say things in a destructive way that is hurtful. They don't think about what they say. They don't think how they're retaliating. And when they do that, there is no self-control. People speak to hurt, and that's not right. And the unfortunate thing is, I've been in that position where I've been on both sides. And the thing is, there is no right and wrong when it comes to that. There is no good when you are saying hurtful things to prove a point. That isn't self-control. So why do we do it? Why do we say these things to the people that we love and care for when we know that our self-control is not there? Why don't we back away and kind of let things calm down and then reapproach it later on? Is it really that important to hurt another person instead of making things right and doing things the way that they should be by being respectful to one another? We need to have a better sense of self-control in our relationships. And maybe if we did, we wouldn't see so many relationships fall apart. Maybe we wouldn't see these high numbers yearly of divorces if there was more self-control. If we say these vows when we get married, and we make these promises to our significant other that we will never hurt them, we will never lie to them, then why do we let these things happen? And then when we do these things, why are we so shocked that they don't stick around? Because we didn't show enough self-control. If we did these things, we would have such an amazing life. But we choose not to do these things. And at the end of the day, we then question why. Why didn't we see what we were doing in the first place? Because we didn't have self-control. So where do we go from here? Where do we start this new journey, this new beginning in living a life where we have more self-control? In the comment spot, please join in the conversation and share your experiences with self-control. When was there moments in your life where you displayed good self-control? When was there times when you didn't? And what were the differences between the two and how you noticed it affect your life? The other thing is, talk about when in your life where someone someone that you cared for, did you not display proper self-control in your relationship? And how did it affect it? What did you do to change it? Did that relationship end? Did that relationship stay strong afterwards and become stronger? Let's figure it out. Maybe there's something that I missed here within self-control. Maybe there's a piece of advice that you can give to others that are struggling with good self-control. Maybe there's a situation, an example that you would like to touch base on. But once again, if you're going to comment or anything like that, make sure that you are being respectful. Don't talk about other people. Don't mention names. Don't point fingers. Don't say anything where I will have to delete or block, because I don't want to do that. This, once again, is a podcast where we come together to try to figure things out, to help motivate one another. You know, it's better to own up to your own faults than to push blame on other people, because that's not what's needed here. What's needed is a world, a society, a community where people can talk without being criticized, because your feelings and your emotions of what you have gone through in your life is your life story. And for someone to say things that are rude and to bring you down or bring me down is not good self-control. This is an opportunity for people to help make an impact on others who need it the most. Because I admit firsthand, I'm still learning good self-control. And I've said this many, many times. I'm not perfect. So let's figure this out together. Remember to think and be positive. Do what you can today, not what you can't. And I believe in you. Don't you think you should too? And if you see someone who served our country, whether it be police, military, fire, or even the hardworking people in our medical facilities, give them a fist bump, give them an elbow, let them know how much you appreciate them. You never know how much they might appreciate that one random act of kindness. So do it today. And don't forget, as always, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, as you can get all the latest updates of when a new podcast has been posted by ringing that bell. It would definitely help out the podcast a lot. So do that today. Until the next time we talk, thank you for listening to the Kent Holste podcast. God bless, and I hope you have a great day.